We've been joined on the program by Mr. Akintunde Sawyer. He's the Managing Director of the Nigeria Education Loan Fund, NELFUND. Mr. Sawyer, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Good evening, and thank you for having me on the program.
I know the last time we spoke, I can't remember, but quite a while ago, I did say that as the program continues, we will be bringing you in to give us update as to the progress so far. We know that when we engage government and throw things like the inflation is in a terrible shape, the economy is in a bad shape, they say, oh, we're in the right direction. And one of the first things that the federal government threw at us is the fact that, oh, look at NELFUND, it's part of the initiative and all of that. So it looks like NELFUND is one of the poster child or poster boy, if you will, of the success of this administration. So let's probe further. So far, so good. Maybe you can report to Nigerians the progress of the fund since you took over its management, or you're the pioneer and manager of the fund, by the way.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. And the first thing I should say is that, yes, indeed, the poster child, the poster boy of the administration is education, not necessarily just NELFUND. And I think if you look at the most successful countries in the world, education has been the cornerstone of progress in any economy, in any socio-economic improvement that you see in any country. So it's not just about NELFUND, it's about the fact that His Excellency, the President, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has focused on education. But in terms of your question as to the progress that's been made, as you know, this program was launched effectively for applications to be received on the 25th of May, 2024. Since then, we've made significant progress in terms of students wanting to apply for this fund. The demand has been phenomenal, given the amount of publicity that we've given to it. So, you know, something like 435,000 students have actually registered on the site. 330,000 have actually applied for the loan of that total number. We've had 128 institutions at tertiary level, that's universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education, that have actually received funds from us. We've disbursed somewhere in the region of 23 billion naira, 18 billion to institutions, and 5 billion for upkeep. And remember, the upkeep is paid monthly, so that figure's going up every month. We've actually ring-fenced those funds. So we're going to see something like 30 billion in total being dispersed for upkeep across the next 8 or 9 months or so. There are 94,000 students who are actually receiving this upkeep and who we've actually catered for. We're receiving applications at the rate of about 1,500 a day. So, you know, there's pent-up demand. Education is important in this country, and you're seeing it from the numbers that we're getting. And we're trying to be as transparent as possible, giving information freely. The president recognizes the importance of education, and we're trying to make sure that everybody else recognizes the same.
So that we can put it on record, I know you mentioned it in passing in case someone out there missed it. So how much, you said 23 billion has been disbursed. So how many students so far have been able to benefit from this 23 billion also?
So 94,000 students have benefited. So in other words, are beneficiaries of the funds that have been disbursed so far. And that figure is going up by about 1,500 a day. I'd say an average of about 1,300 a day are benefiting from this, either by direct disbursement to their institutions or receiving their upkeeps. Remember, the two things aren't necessarily flowing on the same day, but these are the sort of numbers that we're seeing. 94,000 students are benefiting directly today from receiving the 20,000 naira a month upkeep.
Yeah, because I needed you to be clear on that number, because listening to the president at the National Assembly when he was talking about NELFUND, he mentioned 34 billion and 300,000 students. So we need clarity as to what is the fact here. The presentation he made, he was talking about 300,000 students benefiting 34 billion. So was that a mistake, or what exactly was he trying to say there?
Okay, so it's important to understand that once we receive an application, we ring-fence the funds for the students. So, if you take, for example, the upkeep, what we're doing is that we're dispersing the upkeep on a monthly basis. Once we have allocated those funds as funds that are going to go to students, in our books, those are funds that have been dispersed. But remember, we're dispersing monthly because the upkeep needs to come monthly. So the president's figures are entirely accurate. What he's referring to is the amount of money that we've dispersed into an account that's then flowing to the students. That money is committed and it's going to them. But as I say, it is staggered. And remember, we do have a situation in this country where even the beneficiaries in terms of the institutions themselves are receiving the funds at the beginning, or in some cases in the middle of the session. So those figures are sort of staggered, but the funds have been allocated and in some cases ready to be dispersed, but it's certainly been put into a pot that directly goes to the institutions and to the beneficiaries. There's perhaps the discrepancy that you're seeing.
Okay, let's talk about the transparency in the process. Because the whole idea of the Education Fund, if I understand what the intention is all about, is to help students who cannot maybe pay fees and provide for their own upkeep. And now everything is literally done online for transparency and access to everyone. How do you ensure that the haves who don't need this don't come getting this money and deny those who don't have the money from getting this access?
Okay, that's a really good question. And it's important to remember that means testing is relatively difficult in this environment. We know that we've got a high number of people who cannot pay their fees and who cannot afford tertiary education. Now, what we have done is ensure that we are targeting the institutions that we believe the majority of Nigerians who cannot afford to go abroad, who cannot afford to go to private institutions because they're so much more expensive, are the direct and initial recipients of this. So most of the applications are coming from the institutions that we're targeting and that by law we have to focus on. They are the federal government-owned tertiary institutions and the state government-owned tertiary institutions. That's where most of the people who need these loans are currently today. That's not to say that there may not be some on the private side. That's to say that we're using a broad brush at the moment to really determine those who need it. What the president has done is that he's made sure that NELFUND is adequately funded to ensure that everyone is covered by this within the public tertiary institution space. As we go on, and I'm sure you would agree that with every system and every rollout, you learn as you go along. You collect more and more data on those who may need this more than others.
Oh, okay.
And more robustly. At the moment, we are treating and trying to ensure that this spreads as far and wide as possible. And we're looking specifically at students within the public sector-owned tertiary institutions. That's where the bulk of the people are.
All right, Mr. Sawyer. So let's look at some of the facts that you may be able to pick up as quickly as you can. Things like equitable distribution of this fund. For instance, there was a time when, at the very initial point, where students in the Southeast were raising concerns about this fund not getting to them, or I've forgotten the name the fund calls it now, more like, just allow me to use any name, just profiling the institution or the students to be able to get them to come on board. So how far has it gone? If you look at the 6 geopolitical zones, for instance, which are the highest benefiting zones and the least benefiting zones in your view, and why?
Okay. So look, a straight question deserves a straight answer. The highest benefiting zones from this loan scheme so far are mainly in the north. So the northern geopolitical zones have taken up the loan much more rapidly than the ones in the southwest, south-south, and southeast. However, when that came to light, and by the way, when it came to light, it wasn't students that highlighted it, it was other interest groups. What we did was that we ensured that we went and increased the level of sensitization in the south-south and in the southeast in particular. We began to engage more robustly and actively with the institution authorities. We began to sensitize and educate the students in those regions about the advantages of taking the loan. And what we have found is that they've been very receptive to that, and we've been receiving a lot more applications from the southeast and the south-south. And what I mean by that, or what that translates to, is that there's a greater growth in the areas that perhaps didn't initially take it up. They're growing faster now in terms of the uptake than students in the north. So we're going to see an equalization of sorts happening fairly soon. We're investing a lot of time and effort in the areas that we didn't necessarily get them. The other thing I should highlight to you is that attitudes to taking loans differ across the country. Some cultures are more accepting of it, others are more suspicious or perhaps more reticent about taking loans. I think once we began to explain to the over 35,000 students that I and my team have been to visit directly what the terms of these loans are: zero interest, a moratorium of 2 years between, after they've completed their NYSC, which effectively shows that, we're going to give people time to find jobs. The fact that, nobody pays anything back to the loan fund until they have a job. And if they keep that job, then even then, it is the employer that is obliged to make the deductions and pay back to the fund. So that education process is going on, and it's being taken up very rapidly in the southeast and in the south-south. And we're delighted with the results we're getting from that program.
So how much is the
thing I should mention?
Okay, go ahead. Just go ahead.
The other thing I should mention to you is that, if you look at this purely as a geographical exercise, then again, certainly the North seems to have the advantage. If you look at it as a state of origin exercise, you find that there are many students from the South-South and the Southeast who are studying in institutions in the North and who are applying. So the numbers are very different when you look at the states of origin than when you just look at the geography. However, it is important to look at the geography because of the investment going into the institutions.
That's a very good point you just raised. So let's find out how much exposure in terms of funding, how much is in the purse right now, if you can, and is ready for disbursement. The reason I asked that question, because in the piece of legislation that established NELFUND, one of the reasons the government gave that it is not a grant and a fund is for the ability for it to be sustained, and giving loans to students will be based on funds that are available. How much do we have in the funds at the moment?
So what I can tell you is that we've got over 130 billion in the fund, and we've got some other funds that we're expecting literally within days to flow into the fund, and that would amount to another 70 or so odd billion. Beyond that, there are other funds that are earmarked. We get 1% of federal inland revenue collections, which are due to come, and that will probably come in at about 194 billion if our estimates are correct. But the point really here is that we are not short of funds. One of the things that the President Tinubu did, was to ensure that we were adequately funded. And you would have noticed, or you may be aware, that we even received funds from proceeds of crime a few months ago that amounted to about 50 billion. So in terms of funding, we're not concerned because the adequate provisions have been made. And as I say, it's well over 100 billion that we've got at the moment, and we're committed to dispersing, as of today, 108 billion naira, and we're very good for those funds.
I know that there are statutory agencies or agencies that are statutorily meant to contribute to the fund. I know the FIRS, which name will change, by the way, to National Revenue Service or Nigerian Revenue Service. That is, if the bill scales through, that is in the National Assembly. Can you walk us through and help us find out, or give us insight into How compliant have these agencies been in contributing their quota to the fund? I know you have lots of exposure right now. It's about distribution at the end of the day. So which are the agencies that are supposed to be contributing, and how well are they doing that?
So primarily, it's the FIRS that are the main funders of NELFUND. And I can tell you, we have a great understanding with FIRS, and it's very clear that they're very supportive of what the statutes require them to do. We are not, expected to necessarily receive funds from other agencies. However, having said that, we have had great support from NELFUND, who've dispersed a certain amount of funds to us. We've had some funds appropriated. And, as I said to you a few moments ago, we've received funds from the proceeds of crime. So actually, from a statutory perspective, today it's the FIRS. However, there are other agencies of government that are ceding funds to NELFUND to ensure that we're well and adequately catered for. What I will also say to you is that the law allows us to do a couple of other things. One is to raise funds from anywhere we can get it, as long as it's clean, it's legitimate, and it's clear what the intention of the donors might be, and it's acceptable to us. And the other thing is that we are empowered to invest the funds we have for a return, so that we can begin to build in some sustainability in terms of having a robust investment plan. At the moment, we can only invest in government instruments. I think in the future, we will look to find ways of maximizing our return on investment if we're able to access other types of capital.
So are you saying in extent, the funds can be invested in bonds and treasury bills? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying, yes.
Okay, that's quite a good one to bring to the fore, because a lot of people did not know that. We just felt that the money is coming and you distribute the money to all the students that need the money. But there's something I heard, I think I read somewhere, where the policy, an adjustment to the policy, that's why you're here to also explain whether that is correct or not. Is there like a preference now to the course of study of any student that is applying for this fund, or just about anybody, just like it was intended from the beginning, that anybody who is studying just about anything, as long as you meet the mark or the criteria for being a beneficiary, you could get this, or there's a review as to the courses that are prioritized?
Okay, so I know where that comment came from. So I spoke a couple of days ago on an online platform, and I was really extending to the public that, at the moment we are funding all courses. We are not discriminating against any course. A couple of things to bear in mind. We, first of all, have committed to funding the courses of all those who are currently in tertiary institutions from the time they apply for the fund to the end of their course, regardless of the course. However, it's important to appreciate that we're not doing education for education's sake. We're doing education, we're providing these loans for people so that they can have a realistic chance of getting a job. We're doing this partly so that we can make Nigeria more competitive in terms of its workforce. If you think back 30 years ago, shorthand was a very important thing for people to learn if they wanted to go into secretarial services. It's no longer relevant. One of the things that we absolutely must do is look at courses that are relevant to the advancement of our nation and that are sellable, or saleable if you like, for the individuals who are taking a loan to do the course. We're a responsible lender. We're going to lend funds to people to do things that are going to give them the most realistic chance of furthering their own lives, of being able to pay back, and for making our nation more competitive. It's important that you ask me this question because it must not be misunderstood. 45, 50 years ago, computer science was a relatively insignificant course in many institutions. Today, it's leading the world. The world is now technology focused. The countries that are doing best are those who caught on to that very early on. We're not going to lag behind. We're not going to be lending money to people just because we want to score political points. We have to think through this We have to work together as a nation. We have to discuss what our nation needs, and we have to look at what's exportable as well, and what sort of workforce we want so that we can attract investment. That's what the comment is centered around. But I will clarify for you, as of today, we're funding every single course that's available in the public space of tertiary institutions, universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education. We are not discriminating against any course, and we will not do that without proper consultation, proper research, and proper understanding about what's going to move our nation forward and what's going to give people a realistic chance of being able to pay back whatever loans they have. We are a responsible lender at NELFUND.
This speaks to the issue of review of our curriculum by extension, but I know that's not that's not what you're interested in necessarily. Or not. Let me rephrase. That's not exactly what the fund is meant for. The people that are reviewing that will review that, but it can give them a guide as to this. So as we begin to wind down, two quick questions. Maybe answer it in one fell swoop. The challenges so far you've witnessed with this scheme, haven't managed it for this long, and possibly let's project into 2025. What exactly are we looking at? Right now, you say we have about 23 billion to 94,000 students. Please correct me if my facts are not correct. By 2025, this time, what should we be looking at in terms of disbursement and size of benefiting institution or benefiting students in 2025?
So, look, by 2025, we aim to have at least 1.2 million students on the loan scheme. That basically means that we would have covered the majority of students in tertiary institutions that are publicly owned who may wish to take the loan. Our estimate and our target is about 1.2 million. In terms of disbursements, we're going to have to look very closely at what this means in terms of fees. We're going to have to look very closely, for example, at what we need to be paying a stipend. Today it's 20,000 naira. I suspect that it will have to go up next year. So we're yet to sort of do that computation of what the numbers will really look like. And I don't want to commit myself to disbursement numbers other than to say 1.2 million students is our target. I think the other thing I should point out to you is that we also have the mandate for skills development. So we are also targeting in 2025 the position where we would have commenced our vocational training support scheme, where we're going to be providing Nigerians who perhaps don't have an academic bent, but are very strong with their creative skills to help them with getting the right sort of teaching, the right sort of coaching, the right sorts of qualifications to be able to do and participate in the real economy here, where most of the people reside, which is in helping using their hands and their ability to use tools to develop the economy. Now, that's a huge area. There's a lot more to do there, a lot more budget and funding to be made there, and we're going to be focusing on that next year. But I can't give you a figure on that now because we're going through a period of just consultation and trying to understand what the numbers look like and what the skill sets that we need to move Nigeria forward looks like, so that we can begin to really invest intelligently there, not just sort of following a cliched approach.
Mr. PoliticsToday, Sawyer, again, we're going to have this conversation some other time. But it's your check-in portal as to the progress that NELFUND has made, because it's important to the future of Nigeria. And this is why we are always talking to people like you to ensure that our students who can benefit from this benefit as efficiently and effectively as possible. PoliticsToday Sawyer is the Managing Director of Nigeria Education Loan Fund. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me on the program. And I look forward to the next round of discussion with you. It's important that we keep Nigerians updated as to what we're doing. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, we will take a quick break. When we come back, there's been a lot of issues that has to do with human rights. People have said a lot concerning the issue of Dele Farotimi's case. Was his rights violated or not? There are also issues of the spokesperson of the Nigerian police. I'm talking about Muyiwa Adejobi engaging some people online, talking about insult and raining curses being, a justiciable offense. We're going to get a lawyer to make sense of the situation. And that will be after this break. Join us again. you.